I call to order the May 12th, 2026 meeting of the City of Wilsonville Budget Committee. Will the city recorder please do the roll call?
Chair Russell,
Here.
Member Spritzmeyer,
Here.
Member O'Neill,
Here.
Member Engel,
Here.
Member Byers,
Excused.
Member Barry,
Here.
Member Cunningham, Member Skull,
Here.
Member Beach,
Here.
and Member Shevlin.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. I call to order the continued public hearing on the City of Wilsonville's fiscal year 2026-27 proposed budget at 6:01 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, the Budget Committee will be taking public testimony tonight at the public hearing. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. As a courtesy, members of the public have the option to provide public testimony on the proposed budget before the staff presentations begin. In order to accommodate those citizens who do not want to wait until the presentations have been made to speak, community members may elect to wait to testify until after the staff presentations have been completed. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes. A timed buzzer will go off when the 3 minutes are up. Staff will present the report. Additional public testimony will be allowed regarding the proposed fiscal year budget for community members who elected to wait to testify. After all community members who wish to speak have testified, staff will have time to provide any additional comments to the committee. Information regarding how the public could attend this meeting and give testimony is posted at City Hall and was also timely published in the Wilsonville Spokesman and is also posted on the city's website, shown on the screen. Notice was given that testimony could be submitted for the recorder in advance in writing by emailing or mailing it to the city recorder. If you're listening to this meeting remotely, when the time for public testimony is called, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your telephone if you would like to testify. If you're having difficulties with these instructions, you may call the number shown on the screen and enter the webinar ID number shown on the screen when prompted. When called up to testify, state your full name and address for the record. A request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the Budget Committee. Simply indicating you agree with the prior testimony given by speaker you identify is sufficient. And I do have a speaker card for Doris Wheeler. Okay, if you want to come up and testify.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. My name is Doris Whaler, and my address is on file. I listened to your last Budget Committee meeting and was encouraged to see that some members asked questions, mostly clarifying, but trying to get everything straight. For almost 60 years, I've lived off of Beckman Road and attended hundreds of city meetings. Many of us can remember when Mayor Lehan assured us that when we received millions from the Tualatin Valley Water District, those funds would be used to lower our water rates. Even though it's common for one city council not to fulfill the promises of a former city council, I am disappointed how this committee will choose to use the $16.5 million. You'll be putting $6.5 million, I believe, into the general fund, and most of the rest will be used to pay cost overruns on the Beckman Road and Bridge project. The whole budget process is kind of like a hamster wheel. The City Council tells the staff what they expect in the budget, the staff complies, and then you spend 2 or 3 meetings in the late spring reviewing what the staff has submitted. It is up to the Budget Committee to approve whatever is presented, usually without any significant changes. By the way, this is why Budget Committee applicants who might want to step off the hamster wheel are never chosen to be on this committee. The hamster wheel goes round and round, and no one ever has the courage to say, we all love bright, new, shiny ideas, but what about financially taking care of what we have now? your right to ask questions of the proposed budget. Our community doesn't need a committee that simply rubber stamps what's put before them. We need you to be courageous. Taxpayers have to adjust our spending and prioritize what's important. Please do the same for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any budget committee members have any questions? No. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? No. Okay. Hearing no further requests to testify, I will turn it back over to staff to continue with the budget presentations.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Smith, the city's Assistant Finance Director, and with me this evening is Keith Katko, the city's Finance Director. Welcome to night 2 of the city's Budget Committee meeting. This evening, we'll proceed to cover the rest of the departments, including Public Works, Community Development, and our Capital Improvement Project budget. First up tonight is Public Works, for which I will turn it over to Delora Kerber.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. I'm Delora Kerber, the Public Works Director, and with me is...
Martin Montalvo, Public Works Operations Manager.
All right. And this evening, we will be sharing with you the information we have about the Public Works Department budget that is comprised of 10 different distinct funds. I guess that's redundant. Different funds. So the Public Works Department operates and maintains the city's infrastructure and is responsible for public health and safety. Next. There we go. So Public Work Administration, we provide leadership and support services for the whole department. Here I have a nice collage of all the different members we currently have working in the department. We have 32 full-time employees and 2.75 FTEs comprised of seasonal workers who provide the various services that provide the health, safety, and quality of life for the residents and visitors of our lovely city. We support engineering and planning projects. We help manage and design various projects such as the community center siding, the water treatment plant re-roofing, furniture replacement, to name a few. And we also are very involved in asset management to ensure we have a complete inventory of the assets of the city, as well as the preservation of it. We track by number, type, condition, work performed on any one of the assets. Next page. One of the extra programs that we run in part of the department is the Adopt a Road program. And so this is helping keep the city looking litter-free, in that we have volunteers along 40 sections that are typically along arterials. You'll see some of the signs out there saying Adopt a Road and who it is that has adopted it. And each of the members or the volunteers do 3 to 4 litter pickups per year. After they've completed 1-year cycle, then they are able to get a sign with their name on the section that they do. Next page. All right. Another element that we do out of Public Works Administration is emergency management. This is a photo of our last year's Community Emergency Preparedness Fair, and we're having another one this year, and I invite you all to come down to the Stein Boozer Barn on August 29th, and we will be having yet another Community Preparedness Fair. Another significant thing we achieved this year was we put together a workplace safety and emergency response. Every employee has one of these at their desk. It's an easy to flip through guide to give you direction. Say somebody calls about a bomb threat, what to do. Say somebody, there was a fire or some other emergency type situation. It's a quick and easy reference document, as well as maps to show people the escape routes that we have for that. As part of emergency management, we work with staff members to help train them on if there's an event, what they need to do. And also one other element is we have applied this year for a seismic rehabilitation grant, hopefully that we will be successful in that, to be able to rehab the police building across the street. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Martin. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
You
you're
get to go
totally fine.
first.
So after we go through each fund, then I will do as I did our last meeting, go over the numbers. Starting with Public Works Administration here, it reflects the status quo budget in total, bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of 1.2 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget also of 1.2 million with no change in FTE.
Good evening. I'm Martin Montalvo, the Public Works Operations Manager, so I'll be giving you the brief on the operational components of Public Works. So the first one is the Facilities and Grounds Group. So we maintain over 41 public buildings and structures throughout the city. This entails grounds and facility staff to keep up all our facilities in top shape, both for aesthetic and functional purposes. Our in-house janitorial staff provides flexible and efficient services to all of our facilities. It's making us pretty nimble in being able to respond to ever-changing needs within the community. We're also responsible for the life safety equipment in all of our facilities, so fire sprinklers, AEDs, other devices along those lines. So the significant changes this year for our fund, maintenance of two new properties for the TOD Dispatch Center and then some grounds. And then we also have requesting funds for a new facility asset work order software to help us be able to track our work and be more efficient with our work.
So facilities here, it includes those increases that Martin brought up. In total, bringing them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of 2.3 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of 2.5 million with no change in FTE.
Do we pause for questions?
And as you have any questions along the way, feel free to jump in, interrupt us. We're happy to take those. We'll also take those at the end.
Okay.
So the next fund is the Roads Fund. So Matt Baker, I failed to mention, Matt Baker oversees the Facilities Department. We wanted to kind of touch base and put some names to faces with our presentation this year. So the Roads Department is overseen by Brad Painter. In the Roads Department, we're primarily responsible for the maintenance for vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians, access points along and aesthetics along the roadway. We maintain over 88 centerline miles of roadway. This includes roadside landscape, pavement repair, sign replacement, striping, and pavement markings. We respond to inclement weather events throughout the year. We perform graffiti removal and abatement on public infrastructure. We install and remove holiday decorations throughout the year, not just the traditional holiday season. The significant changes this year is we've requested additional funds for some landscaping services along the Beckman Road corridor and also some additional funds for tree preservation within the Charbonneau corridor.
So roads includes those increases that Martin touched on, in total bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of 1.4 million to fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget also of 1.4 million with no change in FTE.
Member Scritzmeyer.
Yes, I just had one question. When it talks about in the road section, under public safety, when it talks about the 24/7, 365 employee staffing for road safety, can you talk about what that looks like? I'm just, especially from a financial standpoint, like what is the cost of that? Is there just somebody on call? How many reports are coming in? Is there overtime because of that?
Sure. So we do provide 24/7, 365 coverage. That presents itself in the form of an answering service that covers our phone lines during non-operational hours. So calls come into the dispatch center. They go to one of two staff people that are on standby. The utilities group has their own specialized staff that are only allowed to work on the utilities. And then everything else gets dispatched to what we call the roads, facilities, parks pager. The answering service triages the call, dispatches it to the staff person that's appropriate, and then they are compensated based on the amount of time that it takes to actually respond. On the average, and I'm looking back at last year's numbers, we get about 1,500 calls in a year. Some of them are incidental and don't require a rollout. Some of them are significant and require a significant number of response. The amount of money, I could not tell you. I'd have to look into that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I will tell you, we had 4 calls last week. So we get an email report of every call every morning telling us what occurred overnight, so we can be accountable and make sure the staff are tracking the cost appropriately. Yep.
Member Engel?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to, if it's okay, to jump back to the facilities section and to inquire about the services that facilities provides to SMART, and to inquire if there's any allocation from SMART to reimburse the general fund for those facilities maintenances.
So regarding the reallocation, I won't speak to that. I
I'm
will hand
gonna
that back to
defer to-
Keith.
Yeah, it's part of there's certain departments in the city that are indirectly allocated, HR, IS, even finance, because they're all housed in the general fund, as is facilities. So there's drivers to how they're allocated, so like HR will be, the allocation is driven by the number of employees in SMART. Facilities is driven by a couple different variables. One is the square footages of various buildings, as well as working with Matt Baker over the number of years. Their individual materials and services budget, he tracks via the library, by building. And so we use that as a variable too to allocate out facilities, which is, again, housed in the general fund, but allocated out to those non-general fund properties, such as SMART.
Yeah, so if I look down at the resources summary and I looked at the interfund charges versus the general fund, would you be able to say like which portion of those resources is, if it's coming from interfund charges to fund those facilities for SMART?
What page are you looking at?
115.
115?
Yes, I could. I just don't have it in front of me. I might be able to get it to you after the break, or I can email it out. I can email out how all the indirects are charged, if that is of interest too. But I certainly can get back to you on it. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just seeing that as a cost add for the year and just wondering how that was reflected in the, allocations.
Okay.
I don't know if this helps your question at all, but on page 66, there's a comment that approximately 78% of the revenues collected by Fleet Service Fund are from the Transit Fund.
Well, that's fleet, which is also allocated out. And fleet houses the fuel and the vehicle maintenance charges. And yeah, transit is a big driver of fleet,
Okay.
the way fleet is allocated out. Facilities, allocated out based on those two variables I mentioned. The exact dollar figures I'd have to get back to you on. But again, there's a portion that's allocated out to the water and sewer, as well as any fund that has a facility that needs to be maintained.
Yeah, thank you. That would be good information to have.
Okay.
Member Beach?
So you mentioned earlier there's in-house janitorial services. Have we looked at if there would be a cost savings to contract that out? I know that certain counties and cities do that. I don't know what would be better savings.
Good question. We actually did that for several years. If you do outsource janitorial services, typically you have to comply with state requirements for RFQ services for that. We brought janitorial services in back in 2021, 22, Delora?
Yeah, so it was 2020.
At that time, we did a cost analysis in terms of cost benefit. We looked at it. It looked at that time as if it was going to be essentially neutral for us. What we were looking at in terms of cost, what we were looking at is increase in service applicability. I can tell you at that time, we brought in a lot of examples from staff and residents, things that they were seeing in our facilities, both City Hall, parks, other areas. They kind of saw what we were seeing in the lack of service. Since bringing janitorial services in-house, the service level has drastically increased. It gives us individual control. It also makes us much more flexible in terms of addressing changing needs within the community. I will say in the last 6 months, 2 other cities, my counterparts, have reached out to me specifically as to how did you do this and how would you recommend we go about it? I'm not going to mention names, but we've passed on all of our information to them, and I think they're moving in that direction. And one correction I wanted to, I said 1,500, thinking big numbers in my head. It's about 150 is the number of calls that we have on an average year. Yeah.
Member Scritzmeyer.
Yes, I've heard a few times about the need for new siding on the community center, and I'm not entirely clear, is that in this budget? Has that been done?
That's going to construction tomorrow.
Woohoo, okay.
Yeah. We have kickoff meeting tomorrow, actually. It is budgeted in this year. The project will span through the next fiscal year with a substantial completion day of September 30th, 2026. 14-week construction cycle.
Member Skull.
During my onboarding, we had a brief discussion about supplies and materials and all that. And so it's for the benefit of the committee, could you explain how we use buying groups and all that to help us with the economies of scale and purchasing the materials?
Sure, be happy to talk about that. So wherever possible, we try and utilize existing cooperative purchasing agreements where feasible. I can tell you almost all of our janitorial, our heavy or large quantity consumables are purchased off of cooperative buying agreements. Our biggest source is Oregon Buys. So the state is the big aggregator of co-op agreements, procurement agreements. We search through those, trying to find what fits our needs, and then if it's something that this particular vendor that's on the state procurement agreement has what we're specifically looking for, we'll utilize as much as possible. An example, we have to publish the consumer confidence report for the water system. It's actually going out at the end of this month. We needed Spanish translation services. We went to Oregon Buys, found a vendor that has a statewide contract with predetermined state pricing, and so now we are publishing for the first time this year our annual consumer confidence report in Spanish language using that cooperative purchase agreement.
And just, if I could interject really quick, the use of the cooperative purchasing agreements is throughout the city, you know, most predominantly with Public Works, but through our parks departments, transit fleet, you know, we consistently use those agreements wherever possible.
Any other questions?
All right. Streetlights. So streetlights are owned by the city, maintained predominantly by PGE. I say predominantly, so about 98% of them are maintained by PGE. The other 2% are maintained by us directly. Streetlights, we've conducted several conversions over the last 5 years, converting the existing streetlights from high-pressure sodium or mercury vapor lights to light-emitting diodes. We've completed close to, this is 2,300 conversions to date. We've just finished phase 4 this spring, which also included the intersection lights at all of our signalized intersections throughout the city. In this fiscal budget, you'll see a line item for phase 5. That's 328 lights in the northern portion of Villebois, as well as we're picking up some miscellaneous stragglers that we've become aware of that weren't covered within phases 1 through 4.
So no large changes here with street lighting, in total netting the increased cost of repair against energy savings, in total bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $367,000 to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of $347,000.
All right, so the next budget is the water fund. So this department is overseen by Jason Roberts as the supervisor. Our key priorities are complying with the Oregon Health Authority drinking water program criteria. We implement our cross-connection and backflow programs through this fund. We conduct testing daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and specials, which are dictated by the state or EPA, testings throughout the water system. In total, we have 137 miles of public water pipe. We have 5 reservoirs with 13.8 million gallons of storage capacity within the system. That also includes our brand-new West Side Reservoir. We currently have 8 groundwater wells for emergency backup in the event that we have disruption from the Willamette River Water Treatment Plant. And one of our key programs is annual hydrant flushing program, which you've probably seen signs out throughout your neighborhoods. And we provide interactive map feature this year to alert community members when we're working in their area and to be aware of water on the road. No significant changes for this fund.
No. So that water distribution reflects the status quo budget, in total bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of 1.9 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget also of 1.9 million, with no change in FTE.
All right. So the next budget has to do with our water treatment and our Willamette River Water Treatment Plant. We partner with Veolia Water for the operation and maintenance of the plant, and we've been doing that with them since April of 2002. In 2025, we produced 2.03 billion gallons of water. That's a lot of water. And we share this water with City of Sherwood. We have like a 1/3, 2/3 split on the amount of water that we produce, and we send off to them in a finished state. Back to the special testing that is required. Every 3 years, the EPA comes up with unregulated contaminant monitoring, so they're trying to have us look at things that aren't currently monitored. And most recently was the UCMR number 5, which was having us test for 29 different PFAS constituents as well as lithium. So we had to do 4 rounds of tests on our finished water, and I'm happy to say that all the tests came up negative. So for this fund, we are looking for a repair and replacement of various assets at the plant to keep up with the maintenance, including local control panel, a SCADA rebuild, fiber optics upgrade, our dissolved oxygen sensor, some door replacements, as well as a makeup air unit that we need for our administration building. Another element that we're looking for funding is to help. We are at the cusp of, we have been working with Veolia for 25 years on the same contract, and we feel it's time to go out and rebid this contract. And so we're soliciting an owner's representative to help us put together the solicitation for a new 20-year contract. Currently, we pay around $2 million a year for the operations and maintenance of the treatment plant, so $3 million a year. And so over a 20-year period, that's the equivalent of a $60 million project. So we're looking to hire an owner's rep to ensure that we get the best value for the money for any new operator, either existing or another operator.
So as Dora mentioned, the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget includes the owner's rep and also those additional charges for the ongoing repairs and maintenance. In total, bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of 6.3 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of 7.3 million.
Member Scholl.
So I have a question regarding the water plant activity. Happened to sit on the Willamette Intake Facility Commission, and I'm just learning about that. How is that connected to the water treatment plant, or isn't it? If I look at what they're doing, it seems like 2 separate entities, and we're involved in that, but I'm not sure what the financial connections are there, if any.
Sure. I'll try to give you the brief version.
Sure.
The city of Wilsonville and Tualatin Valley Water District built the treatment plant as it stands today. The city of Hillsborough, Beaverton, Tigard, they also wanted to look for a new water source. So since we already have basically a straw in the river here at the Willamette treatment plant, the 6 different agencies, so Tualatin Valley Water District, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Sherwood, Tigard, and the city of Wilsonville, had agreed to share in the intake pipe as well as the caisson and the raw water building itself. And that's what is the WIF, the Water Intake Facility Commission, is those 6 agencies and that infrastructure. Once it gets to the caisson, everything from that point is split off between the city of Wilsonville/Sherwood and the Willamette Water Supply Program, which is the other 4 agencies. So that's the part that we all share together. And so then the creation of the WIF, the Water Intake Facility, with them is not only looking after the infrastructure that we have there, but also a big component of that is looking at the health of the watershed. So that's one of the elements, big elements that the WIF group is looking at is source water protection of the Willamette River.
Member Berry.
Thank you for your reports, for both of you. So when you were talking about testing, because water quality is so important, is in this budget, is there money to test for plastics that in our drinking water?
Not currently. That is not a regulated element, nor is it a required element, so we do not. We typically will follow whatever the state or the federal guidelines will tell us about testing, and that's not one that they have set up yet. But if I had to guess, the next unregulated contaminant monitoring will be for plastics.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, so whatever water you consume has to come out the other way, so we're on to our wastewater. All right, so here we complying with the Department of Environmental Quality National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. We do here, as well as we do testing on all the various frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, et cetera. With that, at this treatment plant, we've been partnering with Jacobs for the operations and maintenance. Design capacity of this treatment plant is 4 million gallons per day, and in 2025, we treated 854 million gallons of water. You say, well, there's a difference between water and wastewater. Has to do with a fair amount of water is going into productions of elements. It is also going into irrigation or landscape irrigation and/or other industrial processes. That's why there's not as much coming back to the wastewater treatment plant. As part of that, one of the things that we have is we have beneficial reuse of our biosolids. From that, in 2025, we had 491 dry tons that were taken to a landscape area, and they use it as fertilizer. So now, I mentioned the NPDS, or the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, and we recently were able to renew that back in February of 2026, and it is good for the next 5 years. So for this fund, we are looking for additional funds to help us replace the HVAC, or the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system in the process gallery. That's where a lot of the electronic components are. We're looking at replacing a switchgear meter cabinet. That is where the main power feed into the treatment plant is occurring. And then also the administration building is well over 30-plus years old, and we thought it might be time to replace the flooring and maybe give it a new paint job.
So in total, for the wastewater treatment plant, the changes that Dora mentioned, just some increases in ongoing repairs and maintenance, in total bring them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $3.9 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of $4.3 million.
Member Engel.
Thank you. I was curious about the amount of money that we make from the biosolids. Is that in the miscellaneous revenue on page 64?
We actually do not make any money off
Okay.
of that. We basically find that if they are willing to take it, it saves us in a hauling cost. So it is up to the Jacobs to determine how they would like to use it. Our only criteria is it has to be for beneficial reuse. They cannot take it to a landfill. But what they have found is it is cost exchange of neutral for them to take it or have it taken to a local nursery.
Okay, that's kind of leading my follow-up question. There is some coverage about farmers who have applied biosolids to their crops and encountered contaminants, and they're trying to figure out legal exposure and how to mitigate and make sure that those biosolids are clean and appropriate for use. And I was curious if we do anything about that here to make sure we are covered.
Yes, so we test our biosolids on a regular basis, for one. The other one is there is concern about, is there PFAS, PFOs in the biosolids? So we are working collaboratively with the Association of Clean Water Agencies to do some testing on that. We have helped fund them. They're looking at our biosolids are Class A, which are dried and pretty much to the point of there's very little, or well, no contaminants in it, but everybody is concerned about that, so, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Skull?
For the wastewater treatment and the water treatment plant there, we have about $1.3 million in energy cost per year. Any thoughts about renewables?
Renewable, you mean such as solar?
Solar, yeah, anything of
So
that type.
we have in the past explored solar. At the time that it's been quite a few years, but at the time that we had looked at it, it wasn't really cost feasible of how much we would have to invest for the return on that. At our wastewater plant, we do not generate, what is it?
Methane.
Methane, thank you, methane gas, so that's not really an option. What we have done is we work with the Oregon Energy Trust, and anytime we do replacement of equipment, especially high energy consumption equipment, we work with them on coming up with the most economical or the most energy efficient, so, yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. Do you want to take that, or? I can, I will. Okay. So wastewater collections and industrial pretreatment. So we have quite a few miles of sewer lines there, as well as 9 lift stations, and the lift stations actually are maintained by Jacobs. We have a very robust closed-circuit TV program to help us assess the condition of our wastewater pipes. We, as part of the industrial pretreatment, we have 10 significant industrial user discharge permits within the city, so they're highly regulated. We have another 13 businesses that fall in the category of best management practices. These, both of these categories are industries or commercial entities that could potentially send something harmful to our wastewater treatment plant, so that's why we regulate them. And then we also are very concerned about fats, oils, and grease getting into our system. And in the city, there's over 110 different food establishments that we regulate in order to help minimize the fats, oils, and grease. So for this particular fund, the one additional change that we're, increase of budget we're looking for is funds to help us do a local limits evaluation that is required as part of our MPDS permit. And this is helping us analyze what potential contaminants that might be coming into the plant, and can the plant adequately treat those before anything effluent goes into the river.
So for wastewater collections, industrial pretreatment, and the changes that Delora outlined, altogether brings us from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $1.4 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of $1.5 million with no change in FTE.
Any questions? I had a question about the, I guess, what you're looking in the like fats, oils, and grease and the standards for that. Are there, is it national or state standards that we follow when monitoring that?
Not so much. I mean, there's best practices that we're monitoring, such as you have a business that you do a lot of frying of food, that you would have a grease interceptor. So to ensure that you catch any of that grease, that you might rinse down the sink that they have before it gets into the sewer line. So it goes into a grease trap in which then that gets cleaned, the solids gets cleaned out of it. Those are the type of things. But we also encourage any of the companies to, instead of rinsing your grease off and putting it down the sink, you're better off to scrape it out, scoop it up, throw it into the garbage. Those are the practices that we do. We are a member of the Preferred Pumper Program, of which, so each of these food establishments need to hire somebody, well, typically they hire somebody, to come out and remove the grease from the grease traps, because it can be a gnarly job. And what we do is we work with the pumpers so that they know what the expectations are to what level of cleanliness any of the grease traps should be, and then they report it accordingly, so.
Okay, has there been any consideration or study on if those best practices that are being followed could be more strict, to be more possibly climate-friendly, easier on the intake and the treatment, any of that?
I don't know if there's been any studies as to if there could be more done, type of thing. So, like I said, we kind of follow what's going on. We touch base with our other agencies that are doing the same thing. Through the Association of Clean Water Agencies, these are all the various municipalities that have wastewater, and so we will talk about what's happening amongst the other agencies. So,
I'll add, so the grease interceptors are mandated by the state plumbing code. So that's where the nexus comes for, you have to have this. Our program is to make sure that based on their product that they installed, they're following the best management practices that were defined by the manufacturer for how often that should be cleaned out, what frequency, how that process should occur, so that they're keeping up with it, they're following the manufacturer recommendations, their BMPs, so that they don't allow anything to escape downstream into our collection system. As far as improvements, our main goal is make sure that you're keeping up with it per the manufacturer recommendations, so we're not being overly onerous, but that we're protecting the overall collection system.
Okay, thank you. Member Skull.
In the materials and services, you have almost $1 million. About a little over a third of that is for franchise fees. Could you explain the franchise fees, please?
You want Keith to take that one?
Sure,
Yeah,
well, it
Keith
just as all public utilities in the city, PGE, Northwest Natural Gas, are charged a franchise fee, so are the city's public utilities, which goes back into the general fund. So,
Okay, thank you.
All of our utilities pay a franchise fee. I believe.
yeah.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, can you explain to us a little bit more about how those franchise fees are set? Because I know we do charge those to external customers, internal customers, and I'd love to know more about that.
In the revenue section, page 57 of your budget book, the rates are established by legal contract, I believe, that have, existing contracts between the electric, natural gas, telecommunications are subject to a different rate. The garbage, cable TV, and the water and sewer, they're all set by really interagency agreements with those utilities. Amanda, did you want to weigh in a little bit on some of that?
Sure, yeah, it's kind of a combination. Some of the franchise fees are set by statute, and some are set by agreements, and some are set, for the ones that are owned by the city, are set through resolutions by council.
And do we compare those to what other cities do, and basically, where do we fall in that band?
Yeah, so the most recent one that we updated was actually our solid waste franchise agreement, and was a study that was conducted by the League of Oregon Cities comparing all franchise fees for solid waste. And so we increased from 3% to 5%. That was pretty consistent with most jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions are higher, some are lower, but that was the 5% is pretty much the standard. So that was the most recent one. Telecoms is set by statute. We're not allowed to go over 7%, so that's what we charge. And I think for PGE and Northwest Natural Gas, those are in long-standing agreements that we've had for decades. And the water, as well as cable TV. And then the water, sewer, and stormwater, like Keith said, I believe is through resolution by council, resolution or ordinance by council from a long-standing policy.
Any other questions? Member Skritzmeyer.
Just a comment on the franchise fees. I looked to see if I could find any city that was charging more than 5% for electric and natural gas, and I could not. 5% seems to be the highest.
Any other questions? I did have one about, I think it's the water operating fund. On page 64, and I don't have the other page reference, but there was a comment that more Frog Pond homes are being finished, and they're, I think, expecting to be charged more taxes, but then the usage charge for water decreased. And so I wasn't sure how that correlated.
Well, budgeting or really forecasting, is particularly water revenue, it's a large portion of it is going to be weather related. So I think the proposed, and again, these are just proposed revenue numbers, they're not actuals. They're just, so it got budgeted down just because in terms of the overall trend of actuals had dipped. So it's more trying to align the budget in terms of actual trends, which can vary significantly year to year depending on, you have a hot spring, people start turning on their irrigation systems a lot more. If summer lasts into September, it really has an effect on the water revenue.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, we're almost there.
So your next fund is the Stormwater Fund. This division of Public Works is overseen by Brad Painter. So to start off, I'll throw a little factoid out here. So there's over 90 miles of storm conveyance lines within the city. There's 3,403 catch basins. In 2022, there were 2,300 catch basins within the city. This has predominantly been increased by, this increase is caused by housing development and capital improvement projects. Our main goals are comply with the Department of Environmental Quality requirements identified in our NPDS permit that Delora pointed out before. It's also part of our CCTV program that we use to assess the conditions of our stormwater and our sanitary sewer pipes throughout the city. That's the image that you see in the far right. It's a little robot that we send down the pipes. It's pretty interesting, actually. Another big component is the street sweeping program. So we sweep 185 lane miles and 42 bike lane miles annually. And in this fund, we're requesting additional funds for maintenance of the Beckman Road stormwater facilities that'll be done through contracted services.
So overall, for the Stormwater Maintenance Fund, this reflects a status quo budget, bringing them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $1.4 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of also $1.4 million, with no change in FTE. And that concludes the Public Works portion of this
no, we got one more.
presentation.
We got one more slide.
Oh, one more page, that's right.
Just wanted to remind everybody to celebrate Public Works Week coming up here. And this year is Rooted in Service, Powered by Community. So each year, the American Public Works Association encourages all communities to celebrate public works.
And that concludes the Public Works portion
There
of
we
this
go.
presentation. Before we proceed, are there any remaining questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Community Development, for which I'll turn it over to our interim Community Development Director, Delora Kerber.
This way, man, I got it.
Yep.
Hello. There we go. Good evening. I'm Delora Kerber. I'm the interim Community Development Director, here to give a presentation on the community development funds. Note I said interim, as the CD administration budget, you'll see, reflects the funding for a full-time permanent CD director coming up this year. Community development is responsible for economic development through promoting business expansion and job creation, management review of public projects for capital improvement, as well as infrastructure, creation of long-range plans, and ensuring compliance with zoning and regulations, and administering building permits and inspections to ensure construction meets safety codes. Community development is funded in various ways. Maybe next page, sorry. various ways, including development permit fees, charges for services, project management fees for capital improvement projects, as well as transfer from the general fund. The building division is funded through building permits. All right, so to talk about happenings related to economic development, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. My name is Matt Lorenzen, and I'm the city's Economic Development Manager. Tonight, I'd like to share a few thoughts on where the city's greatest economic development opportunities exist and what Oregon's property tax system means for Wilsonville's long-term economic development outlook. Before I get into that, I want to maybe just spin back one slide. Before I get into that, I want to briefly describe my role and highlight some of last year's work. Economic development sits at the intersection of many community development functions. On any given day, I may be collaborating on infrastructure projects, planning issues, or serving as ombudsman between the city and local businesses that are navigating permits or development processes. Every day looks a little different. My work also overlaps heavily with other departments. In urban renewal, I work with Keith and Catherine in finance. When it comes to communicating with residents, businesses, and prospective employers and investors, I partner with our communications team. I'm a division of one, so I wear many hats. In addition to meetings with businesses and internal coordination, I spend time pursuing grants and outside funding to supplement city resources. Last year, we secured $250,000 from Business Oregon to help fund sewer design work for the Day Road sewer project, and that will support future industrial development in both Coffee Creek and Basalt Creek. And I think this topic will come up again briefly when we cover urban renewal later tonight. The common thread that runs through all this work is attracting investment and encouraging thoughtful, efficient development. And that brings me to my first slide. There we go. Oregon is unique in many ways, we know that. It's unique in its property tax system. Property tax is the lifeblood of the city's general fund. Our ability to maintain services depends on revenues keeping pace with inflation and the growing cost of providing those services. Measures 5 and 50, passed in the 1990s, significantly shape that reality. Keith discussed this with you last week, and I just want to build on those points a little bit more tonight. Generally speaking, these measures, 5 and 50, they limit annual growth in our property tax bills to about 3% annually. That protection is valuable for us as taxpayers, but it also creates long-term financial pressure for cities and counties, especially when inflation and operating costs rise faster than 3%, as they often do. The Venn diagram on the screen illustrates the challenge. Some residents prefer to keep things as they are, and at the same time, residents also want and expect strong public services, good schools, public safety, parks, libraries, and naturally, no one wants higher taxes. The problem is that particularly in Oregon, where we also do not have other revenue sources like a sales tax, it's extremely difficult to maintain or improve service levels without either raising taxes or adding new tax base through development. The center overlap in the diagram, no development, great services, and no tax increases, is very difficult, if not impossible, to sustain over time, and Keith has been calling attention to this in his budget message. If increasing tax rates is undesirable and reducing services is also undesirable, that leaves one practical option: intentionally planning for and facilitating new development that expands the tax base and supports future services at the current tax rate. Next slide, please. So another way to say this is how we use our land matters a lot. In my role, I don't pursue growth for growth's sake. I focus on facilitating efficient development that generates high value per acre. Of course, a successful city can't consist entirely of industrial land or dense mixed-use development. A livable city requires variety, but there must be enough highly productive land uses to support the broader community and offset less efficient development patterns. Balance is the key to a financially healthy city. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, now let's look at some of Wilsonville's major opportunity areas. Last week, Keith mentioned that Coffee Creek and Basalt Creek industrial areas are foundational to the city's future financial health, and I would agree with that assessment. As you can see in this image, much of this area is either undeveloped or occupied by low-value, low-intensity outdoor uses approved under Washington County jurisdiction. One major economic development goal in the coming years is to see these lands annexed and developed. I don't believe that will happen through market forces alone, and time and experience has shown us that. At least I don't foresee that in the near or midterm. And that's why we're taking strategic action to try to expedite the sale and development of property in this area. Industrial development, particularly manufacturing, tends to generate high value per acre while placing relatively low demand on public services. It is, however, infrastructure intensive, which means significant upfront investment is required. That's one reason the Coffee Creek Urban Renewal Area was established in 2016, to help fund the infrastructure necessary to unlock this long-term economic opportunity. Next slide. Another key opportunity area is Town Center. As you know, Town Center is planned for 2 to 5 story mixed-use development. This type of development is both infrastructure efficient and high value per acre. New housing does create additional demand for services such as parks, libraries, and schools. But Town Center has tremendous potential to contribute much more substantially to the city's long-term fiscal health than it would if the status quo development pattern is continued. Realizing that potential will require transformation. Today, much of Town Center is dominated by surface parking lots, and those don't generate a lot of tax revenue. Over time, the vision is for this area to evolve into a more compact, financially productive, and vibrant district. Next slide. Lastly, I want to mention a property that has just recently come onto the city's radar. Siemens, formerly known as Mentor Graphics, has announced plans to consolidate operations into the western portion of its campus and eventually partition and sell the remaining property over the next several years. Policymakers should also be aware that Siemens owns the 40-acre tract south of Beckman Road, which is expected to be included in that disposition. These properties sit at the geographic heart of the city. If they redevelop or develop anew in the case of the southern property, and how that redevelopment integrates into the broader community will be an important policy discussion for the city moving forward. Part of that conversation should also weigh the financial trade-offs associated with different types of development. We anticipate those conversations will occur as part of an upcoming comprehensive plan update with substantial community engagement. Facilitating new development within the city's existing boundaries and utilizing existing infrastructure will always be a more fiscally efficient option versus extending infrastructure into unincorporated areas. So later this evening, I think, well, in just a bit, Dan Carlson from the building department will be talking about, or at least mentioning, the Cisco development underway. So this property that we see as we drive on I-5 or on Parkway Avenue going to Costco and Target that is undeveloped. It's owned by Cisco, and they have plans to develop that. That will be a significant boon to the city's revenues, and it doesn't require expanding into outlying areas. Gerber Gear is moving its headquarters from Tigard to a building on the frontage road on the other side of I-5, another great win. And even something like the Lamborghini dealership, which maybe some of us won't shop there, I know I won't. But still, when we think of it from a property taxation standpoint, a beautiful building like that, that is tied into infrastructure that's already in place, is a great win. So with that, I'll close by reiterating a point from an earlier slide. Our land is the base resource from which community prosperity is built and sustained. It must not be squandered. In community development, we work every day to ensure that Wilsonville's finite land resources are used as thoughtfully and productively as possible, with input from residents and leadership from elected and appointed officials. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about economic development in Wilsonville.
Any questions?
Okay.
With that, thank you. With that, we will move into the dollars. So economic development falls under this community development administration category. Altogether, it is an FTE of 2, so it's our community development director and also our economic development director. So for community development admin, personal services reflects an increase due to a prior year vacancy for the community development director position, which is anticipated to be filled later this year. Otherwise, no large changes here, bringing them from fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $560,000 to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of $780,000, with no change in FTE.
All right. Engineering. So our engineering department is headed up by Zach Weigel, our city engineer. And the engineering division oversees the planning, design, and construction of the city's infrastructure, including the water, wastewater, stormwater, roads, and parks. And they do all that to ensure connectivity and safety for our citizens. So on the screen here, you can see example of a capital project, and this is our Beckman Road corridor project that the engineering team oversaw, the design and construction of it. This project consisted of 5 individual infrastructure improvement projects designed and constructed together to be one of the largest infrastructure projects undertaken by the city of Wilsonville. First, this is the first project in Wilsonville to utilize the alternate contracting methodology called progressive design build. Construction of the project was completed a month early and was under the authorized budget. Another photo you see here is development, and this is a Frog Pond Ridgecrest. The engineering team continues to ensure that public infrastructure such as the streets, the sewers, water, stormwater, and other utilities provided by the developers in the Frog Pond West neighborhood are sufficient to serve the needs of the current and future residents of Wilsonville. Engineering team makes sure that infrastructure is constructed to high-quality materials and meet performance standards that will serve the residents for a very long time. It also helps to keep utility rates low that the fund infrastructure maintenance and replacement lower. Helps to keep that low. The last one is the natural resources that you see here, and the natural resources team completed the city's first climate action plan adopted by the council earlier this year. The climate action plan will provide the city with a roadmap to help us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and help reduce the impacts of climate change. This budget shows a reduction of funds as previously there were funds put aside to help support the wastewater NPDES permit renewal, which was completed earlier this year.
So overall for engineering, this reflects the status quo budget, in total bringing them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $2.9 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget, also of $2.9 million, with no change in FTE.
Any questions?
Okay, so the planning department is led by Miranda Bateshell, the planning director. And the planning division helps the city decision makers determine the kind of community that we want Wilsonville to be. It helps chart the course to make sure that the vision is a reality. The planning division is responsible for the city's land use policies and regulations, including the comprehensive plan, various master plans, and the development code. For current planning efforts, focus on working closely with customers seeking to develop commercial, industrial, and residential projects. The current planning duties include all aspects of development coordination, the site plan review, construction oversight, and inspection services. And as you can see here, the various projects that the planning division has worked on this year, but the Vuela construction and occupancy, precision countertops, both those photos that you see. Also been working a lot on the Frog Pond West housing and neighborhood park construction, as well as they've processed over 300 administrative development permits and over a dozen code compliance cases that they have resolved this year. Next page. So that's part of it. The other part is long-range planning. And so long-range planning projects focus on engaging the citizens as well as local, regional, and state agencies to help prepare plans for future development of the community. This encompasses the city's comprehensive plan as well as system-wide transportation system plans and other plans that we have, and area-specific, be it Frog Pond East or Frog Pond West, master plans. Staff facilitates legislative amendments to the comprehensive plan and development code to achieve both local goals as well as compliance with regional and state laws. And here some of the highlights of the various achievements that have been done this year, as you can see, of the housing needs analysis being completed, economic opportunity analysis, supporting for council's town center communication goal, Tree City USA, that's one of the things we're very proud of. And then using Let's Talk Wilsonville, they've been able to engage over 250 community members and inform many, many people within the community. The planning budget reflects a reduction associated with a couple of changes to personnel, reduction of planner position, and also reassignment of a planning manager position to a senior planner.
In total, bringing them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $1.6 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of $1.5 million with a 0.5 decrease in FTE.
Any questions? I had a clarifying one. I'm assuming it's a typo, but I just wanted to be sure. It's on page 106 for the department goals. There's a part here that says continue and enhance focus on engaging. Is that supposed to be underrepresented?
Yes. Good
Okay.
catch. Thank you.
Will that be fixed in the final budget?
Yes.
Okay,
Making a
thank
note
you.
of it right now. Thank you.
Member Skull.
I have a question. I wanted to tie this together for a while. When I worked on the planning commission, you talked about the long-range planning that the planning group is working on. How does that, with the affordable housing and all the stuff that went into that, how does that tie into the community development activity? Do they
I
work-
am going to defer to Miranda Nachel to answer
Yeah.
that question.
Because it seems like there's two, there's parallel processes going on here that somewhere along the line, they should merge in certain aspects.
So, thank you for, Budget Commissioner Skull, Counselor Skull. I'm struggling with the right formality here. Thank you for that question. I just want to make sure I am clear on the question. It's in relationship to the housing production strategy and the actions we put in that, and then how does that move forward in terms of our work program in the next year?
Right, and how do
Okay.
they tie together with what Matt's working on with the community development? He's got a lot of, there's a lot of different areas there that could be, that will be potentially developed over time, a combination of industrial, commercial, and residential. How does what you're doing tie into what he's doing?
Thank you very much. So I feel like there's a few different items there. I'll talk a little bit about the Basalt Creek and industrial areas as well as then housing. And the area that he was talking about that's off of Parkway, currently owned by Siemens, but looking to be dispositioned, as well as the housing production strategy. There were a few items there. So the way that the work intersects is essentially we've laid groundwork in our prior plans. As you know, with the adoption of the housing production strategy last year, it outlined a specific number of recommendations that we would be looking to move forward over the next 6 years as a part of our requirements with the state to implement that housing production strategy. So we look at the work program that we have in the division. The majority of our staff are actually most of the time busy working on current planning and processing the applications that are coming into the city. And so we do have to kind of make the best of what we can with the long-range work program. When we have mandates from the state, that does take away from some of the things that the city might want to be pursuing on its own. So that's something that we do have to juggle. But one of the items that we're working on right now is actually an implementation of essentially both of those things. So as you know, coming in front of you will be some changes to our development code to support one of the items in our housing production strategy. Another item in there is related specifically to what Matt was talking about with some of the land that we have available in the city and how we might want to position it more efficiently. And that had to do with the action around our comprehensive plan and looking at areas in the city that have not developed yet and how we want to make sure we're planning for that most appropriately and most effectively for the best potential outcome for the city. And so that's an action item. It's technically, I think, action item A. That item would be coming forward in front of the Planning Commission and the City Council in the future. So we look at these opportunities and we look at where they're lining up in terms of opportunities for us to continue to do that efficient planning and then set the stage for development with the completion of those plans. And so similarly, as Matt was talking about some of our industrial areas, that's what's happening on the north end of town in Coffee Creek and Basalt Creek. We are finishing up this year with a Basalt Creek master plan that will be adopted by the end of this calendar year. And that is one of the major long-range plans that the city has been working on in order to position that land most effectively for future employment growth, providing good jobs for our community base.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Excellent, thank you. Okay, next we are going to pivot to the Community Development Fund 5-year financial forecast. Much development opportunity and potential remains within the city, though timing of development and permit fees is somewhat uncertain. No immediate action needed, but we'll continue to monitor this fund closely, updating assumptions as known, and taking action as necessary to ensure that the ending fund balance remains at or above the financial policy minimum.
So just one comment to tag on to what Catherine said. The delta here is largely the private development is missing because we don't budget that in. We can't forecast that in. The future is very uncertain. So the revenue is underrepresented because that is not factored in. We simply don't know what's 2 years out, 3 years out. Forecasts are directional. They're not the destiny. This fund, as many of you who've been on the budget committee year after year, realize is always on the watch list. We look at this fund constantly. It is the future of society, the development that's coming to the city. Right now, it's sustainable for the next 2 years, and then we take a look at the development that we hope materializes. Wilsonville obviously is very well poised for future development. We're just a little bit uncertain on the timing and the actual realization of that. So that is why that 5-year forecast always looks a little bad out there towards the latter years.
And we don't just work on these financial 5-year forecasts during the budget process. We actually are consistently re-looking at these matrices throughout the year.
Member School? No, it's for you. Yeah.
Okay. So relative to what you were saying, Keith, relative to the revenues and the reserves there and how you adjust this chart, when projects start to fester, does Matt have to send you a signal, your team a signal when you decide to put it into the forecast? What's that switch for you?
Well, each year, our engineering department and the planning department develop the forecast revenue of development for the next year out, even though it's a little bit of an estimate or a guesstimate, particularly on the timing. We just don't know we don't know sometimes when these external large companies are going to act on any development plans, and with that comes all the subsequent revenue. So it's really looked at year after year, usually around February, March, when we start putting this budget together. So that's how that's done.
Yeah, because if you go back and look at past curves for community development, general fund and everything, they all kind of stay within the same shape. But they just shift.
Yeah.
And, the reserves are always on a downward side, and the expenditures and revenues kind of, basically cross each other here and there and everything. But essentially, over the years, right. It's the same configuration.
It's a little bit of feast and famine on certain years. And one other kind of component of this is we know the expenses, or we know the budgeted expenses. Budget's not actuality. So we're budgeting full employment in this fund, when in reality we haven't had a CD director. That's an unfilled position. Engineers are always really hard to recruit for. I think we have two engineer positions opening and such, but they're fully budgeted. So the expense trajectory, we know. We just don't know when. The revenue side's a little more uncertain.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Member Engel.
Thank you. I wanted to know more about, on page 94, you mentioned that you're going to assist the building division in analysis of a potential city rental property inspection program. And I was curious if you could go into what that inspection program would look like, if that'd be a self-sustaining program, and how quickly we might see that get developed.
I'm going to say, so our next presenter is Dan Carlson, our building official. We'll let him do his presentation, and he can answer that question.
He's not feeling well, but we have him on Zoom here.
Yeah.
And if we want to just roll into the building inspection component, we can always come back for questions too, because they're somewhat related in terms of development that's happening.
I did have a quick question before we move
Sure.
on. On the 5-year forecast, and this may have already been covered, the financial policy minimum increases, is that already set? What's the plan for that?
So that financial policy minimum is actually based on a percentage of the operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for community development before we roll up to building? Okay. Next up is building, for which I'll turn it over to the city's building official, Dan Carlson.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having me, Chair Russell and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Dan Carlson. I serve as the city's building official. It is good to be with you tonight. I always enjoy getting to share and present with you, even though I am battling a cold. I didn't want to share that. So thank you for the opportunity to do this remotely. Tonight I have 3 charts that I'm going to essentially focus on. If you've served on the Budget Committee previously, you've seen similar charts to these before. I like to highlight some of the aspects of these charts and provide my perspective on some of the trending that we see in construction activity. So the first chart here provides perspective for the number of building permits based on the calendar year. And you can see we have 19 years worth of data that we've been tracking. It's important to note that these permit reviews, they don't just reflect building activity. They provide a reflection of the concurrent permit reviews that we do with planning, with our partners in engineering and natural resources and other review partners. It's really done as a collaborative team together. So those numbers really reflect the entire workload, the entire department, whenever other disciplines are needed to review and approve a project. So I'll start with commercial. Commercial it includes industrial and multifamily housing. That is denoted by the red line. So you can see we issued 273 commercial tenant improvement, remodel, addition permits in 2025. So this activity is really actually pretty healthy. This is the second highest value that we've had in the last 10 years. And I guess from my perspective, we often hear a lot of concerns about business closures, and certainly we take those concerns to heart. But while we do see closures, we also see a permitting activity that sort of offsets those closures and supports a healthy narrative of positive growth, meaning that it appears that businesses are reinvesting, or we're attracting, as Matt mentioned, Gerber Gear, the likes of Gerber Gear. So we're attracting new businesses to the community, which is healthy. The green line on the very bottom is the number of new commercial structures. In 2025, we had 13 new commercial structures, notably the likes of Lamborghini. We had 3 new multifamily buildings that we were finally able to get issued in Villebois Village Center, and others. So this really shows a steady and slightly elevated level of permit activity for new commercial structures as well. So overall healthy. Single family is denoted by the purple line. New single family permits are trending slightly upwards compared to last year. Last year we had 58 new homes that we issued, in 2024. And in 2025, we issued 69, so 11 more, which is good. You'll see that we had some booming years in between 2013 and 2017. These were attributed to the Villebois, the massive rate of growth in Villebois. If we excluded these 5 years, our average would be 80.7 new home permits per year. So again, at 69 new home permits this last year, we're a little shy of 80.7, still lagging a little bit behind our normal average, but climbing out of what I would perceive to be a slowdown. So in the budget before you, we take this historical perspective into consideration, and we base our forecasts also on discussions from builders. We see new development activity being relatively flat for the foreseeable future. The turquoise blue line is single-family remodels in addition. This number is 82 remodels and addition permits for 2025 for homes. We're down from the all-time highs last year and the year before of 133 and 144. So those were some very high years. We're also above the overall 19-year average of 51 permits per year. So we're over 51, that's our average. That's very healthy, but certainly trending down just slightly from our all-time highs. In summary, I would say this level of activity is actually above normal and healthy, and it's expected to continue. If I can move to the next chart, please. This is more of a zoom out of the previous chart that you just saw. It really gives a broader view of the overall levels of permit activity tracked by the blue dotted line. Overall, we issued 989 building permits last year. This is down from the 2 prior years and down slightly from our 19-year average. Our 19-year average would be 1,197 permits per year. So still honestly within that ballpark. When I drilled into the stats last week to try to get my mind around what could be the cause for this sort of downward pull, it seems to stem mostly from the number of the trades permits that we issue, and these are plumbing permits and mechanical permits. Both of those areas seem to be down. And honestly, I don't really have a good rationale for why these would be down. These are permits like replacement water heaters, furnaces, replacement air conditioning units, repipes or sewer repairs, things like that. So to give you some real numbers to these, in 2025, we issued 552 trades permits versus our overall 19-year average of 748. So they're down by almost 200 from our overall average. And certainly down by about 100 from last year. So I'm sorry, I don't really have a great explanation for why, but that is the reality. Moving on to chart number 3, this is the total project permit valuation by calendar year. And again, 19-year span. And this chart is included really because it provides an alternative perspective, not just to the number of permits or the volume of activity, but to the value of the projects that we're seeing. So from a budgetary perspective, it's really important to get our arms around the value when we're forecasting permit revenues because revenues are primarily based on the project value rather than the number of permits. So you can see we have the blue line. I often refer to this as like riding a roller coaster. It looks a lot like a roller coaster that I recently rode, but you'll see we had $103.5 million in project value in 2025 as a total. So it really does help to see this because it illustrates that our work is in fact very, very cyclical. The projects are difficult to forecast. We do our very best at looking into the crystal ball and trying to anticipate when projects are going to hit us based on when they come, when we get pre-application requests from developers, based on conversations that we're having with economic development, with Matt and his power team of one, and just other factors, economics, what we're seeing in the global economy, things like tariffs, things like materials and supply chain issues that we saw previously. So all that to say that, we have to be able to maintain a strong fund balance to be able to weather development cycles in order to deliver services for the entire duration of a project. And in some cases, permit fees that we collect have to support services for 1 to 2 years from the time a permit is issued. So I would say $103 million in total project value is healthy and in relative line with our 19-year average, which is over 19 years, it averages at $91.5 million. So just to dive real quick, deeply here, and then I'm going to wrap up. For commercial, again, this is denoted by the green and the red lines. Green, you can see new buildings or structures, we're at $30.5 million. The average for that line is $29.5 million, so we're right in line with our average. The red is remodels, additions, and tenant improvements. That was at $29 million. This is above the average of $25.5 million. So a very good a line as well, a very good result. For single family, this is denoted by the purple line. In 2025, we issued $37.7 million in single family project value. This is higher than in 2024, which makes sense because we actually issued 11 more permits than in 2024. Remodels and additions are not shown for clarity on the graph, which would barely register on the graph scale. However, the average value is just $1.8 million per year for remodels and additions. It is interesting, just a little aside, for the last 3 years, we have seen a significant uptick in the value of remodels and additions. In 23, 24, and 25, we saw values of $6.9 million, $7.3 million, and $7.4 million, compared to the 1.8. So those are really healthy numbers. To me, it speaks to, and based on doing inspections of these projects and plan reviews of these projects, we're certainly seeing that people are investing in more amenities for their homes. Some individuals are really investing strongly in solar. We've seen some pretty interesting wine cellars and saunas and spas and covered patios, outdoor kitchens, things like that. So I am encouraged by that. To me, that means that people enjoy living here in this community, and that's very positive. So I maintain a positive outlook. I don't see it just shooting off the charts, with one exception, And that exception would be if we do come into a really large project, such has been discussed now for, I think we're going into 3 years with the Cisco project. That is a site that has been actively engaged with our planning staff in working through land use entitlement for, like I say, I think close to 3 years. So eventually that's going to crack loose and we're going to have a really big project on our hands. And we will probably have to come back to you for some form of a supplemental budget to increase revenue projections if that occurs. With that, I am happy to answer whatever questions that you have. And I will also try to speak to the rental housing code question. I don't want to miss that.
Member Engel, I think that was your question.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just re-ask that because it was in a different section of the budget. But I wanted to know more about the proposed project, kind of what it would do, how it would be funded, and what the rollout timeline would be.
So the answer is one you're probably not going to like to hear, quite honestly. The answer is that the council goal that refers to was a goal that City Council put together to look at exploring the feasibility of starting a rental housing inspection program. Essentially, the results of doing analysis with a lot of our counterparts resulted in it not being financially feasible. And we happen to have a healthy partner with the county in engaging with a lot of rental and landlord tenant disputes. They have an incredible program that centers around mediation between tenants and landlords. And so we're actually actively working on putting together a web page. I just saw a draft of it recently that will help complement and help give people linkages to the county resources that are available to that. But council chose not to move forward with that, with developing a rental housing inspection program is the long and the short of it.
Thank you. Just for a quick clarification on my end, does the county do rolling inspections at this time, or is it entirely off of problem reports?
That's a good question. I believe what the county really tries to do is, number one, educate with whoever the complainant is to make people aware of their rights and responsibilities. They have a website that's developed to help in that endeavor with education. And then I believe that they, once individuals, feel like they have their understanding of what their roles and responsibilities are, they try to connect them with mediation services. So in my experience, especially in with a previous employer, City of Corvallis, I've spent 20 years of my career there. We had a lot of tenant-landlord disputes with student housing. And most of the time, if you can get the students or the tenants to talk to the landlords and vice versa in a way that is collaborative or in a way that's helping each other see the different viewpoints, you're going to get to success. And so that's what the mediation focuses on. In fact, from what I understand, they have a pretty stellar record of solving these types of cases before they end up in court.
Well, that is good. Thank you. And I'm glad to hear we're devoting, the resources that are appropriate to educating our community on that.
Sure. Yeah, just a second. To kind of add on to that, I don't remember what page you referenced, but I wonder if that's something that could be clarified in the budget, that it's already been looked at And so people,
Yes, I made a note of that. Thank you.
Okay.
It's page 94.
okay, thank you. Member Shevlin?
Just to tag on to that, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago when a citizen reached out to me about landlord-tenant dispute concerns, and I reached out to our city attorney to find the resources, and I was able to direct her to our city website, but then also the linkages to the county resources, and it's very robust. I haven't had the opportunity to follow up with this particular citizen, but there's a lot of information there. And so I felt comforted that at least she would be able to find what she needed, and I'll follow up and make sure she was able to receive the help she needed.
Member Skull?
Comment and a question. Relative to the rental housing inspection, Dan and I have talked about this a little bit. I do a lot of insurance inspections. I do a lot of rental properties, and it's truly needed in terms of conflicts and basically conditions and so forth. And I'm glad to hear that the county is supporting that and has a strong program to support it, because I've seen some pretty good stuff, but I've also seen some pretty nasty stuff out there. And it's basically, I think it's the responsibility of the community, the county, to jump in and take care of that and stay on top of that. So question I don't know whether this is for Dan or whether this would be for Matt. Just curious about the Cisco project. Is that an expansion project, or is that something different than what Cisco's main business is?
I can try to take that. Yes, that is an expansion project. If I recall correctly, it is an expansion to the west from their current facility. That looks, if I recall correctly, it was 3 buildings that would be included, and some significant expansion space, so yes.
Counselor Skull, Miranda Bateshell, Planning Director of the City of Wilsonville again. I would just add that that is an expansion. It's new construction on that west side, and what is that kind of vacant Ellickson site we've often referred to in our regionally significant industrial area. So they acquired that property, I think it was like about 5 years ago. They've come in and talked to us a few times over the past few years, as Dan mentioned. And last year, they submitted a land use application. That application has been deemed complete, and that application is currently being scheduled for a public hearing in front of the Development Review Board. So we do expect entitlement of that project in the near future, probably this fiscal year or early next fiscal year. And then they would be able to do construction when it lines up for them. But it's substantial expansion of what's on the existing site. So you'd have a lot more warehouse capacity for the food items, and then you'd have essentially additional truck parking, loading and distribution in between the 2 buildings. So the parking wouldn't be on I-5. We're looking at a building frontage that would be facing I-5.
So completion would probably be 28, 29 timeframe based on their schedule?
Probably. I mean, they haven't given us a hard schedule. They have, but they could potentially start in 2027 if they wanted to. Or even later this year, honestly. It depends on how fast they're ready to move, and we don't have a sense of that yet.
Any other questions?
Okay, moving on to the numbers. So for the building inspection fund, this reflects no large changes in total, bringing them from a fiscal year 25-26 amended budget of $1.4 million to a fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget of also $1.4 million, with no change in FTE. Are there any additional questions for community development? Okay, next up is going to be our capital improvement project budget, for which I'll turn it over to Finance Director Keith Katko. However, but before I do so, do we want to take a quick 5-minute break?
Can I get a motion to take a quick break?
I move for a 5-minute break.
Second.
Okay, the motion for a break has been issued by Counselor Cunningham, seconded by Mayor O'Neill. Can I get a vote on it?
Yep.
Everyone in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Vote passes unanimously. We'll take a break and come back at 7:45.
these first few slides, then
Okay.
you can take control.
Okay, I reconvene the City of Wilsonville Budget Committee meeting at 7:47 PM.
Okay, so we're going to move into the capital improvement portion of the budget, and that's represented on page 171 of your budget book. These are the large, non-reoccurring projects that have a useful life greater than 1 year. The total CIP budget for next year is $53.8 million, and that's the combination of the capital project expense, the project management fees, and the general fund overhead component to those projects. How that's broken out by funding source, there's a component of operating funds, intergovernmental. This could be the contribution from the city of Sherwood for some of the water projects, or could be grants combination in there. Urban renewal picks up a component. System development fees pays a large portion as well. And then the general fund kicks in, and those will be your parks projects, some facilities projects to the library. There's an HVAC project, as well as those loan proceeds are for, and Zach will get into, it'll be more for the sewer component of projects, and that is reflected from a DEQ loan we have secured. The top 8 projects listed here, Beckman Creek Interceptor is the largest project, of course. Those top 8 projects represent 63% of the CIP budget. There's 97 different projects. Zach will go over some of them. He's not going to go over all of them, but you can feel free to ask about any of them. And then at this, I will turn it over to Zach Weigel, the city engineer.
All right, thank you, Keith. Good evening, Chair Russell and members of the Budget Committee. My name again is Zach Weigel. I'm the city engineer, and I'm pleased to present you with the proposed capital improvement program for fiscal year 26-27. Keith already covered that, we have, if you look through the budget, we have 97 projects in there, and I promise I won't go through every single one of them. I will stick to the highlights of some of the more notable projects, but as Keith said, I'm happy to answer any questions about any of the projects. Just a quick reminder on where these projects come from, how do they get into the capital improvement program. There's a kind of a list here of where those 3 areas where they come from. We have these annual repair and replacement projects. You can see those in the budget. They're listed as annual projects, and they do things like replace a section of worn out sewer line, or there's also some budget line items for unexpected things that come up during the year that Public Works finds during their regular inspections that need kind of that more immediate attention. So there's budget available for those types of things. And then there's some projects related to council goals that are created during the council's goal setting. Oops, jumped ahead there. All right. So I'll walk through some of the projects on these maps. The city's broken up into 4 sections, and we'll walk through the projects kind of on a location basis, starting here with the northwest quadrant. So looking at the map, we're west of I-5, north of Barber Street, all the projects in that area, mostly focused around supporting development in Coffee Creek and Basalt Creek industrial areas. So as Miranda mentioned earlier, their team and engineering are working on Basalt Creek planning area. That work's underway and will be wrapping up here by the end of the year. There's the Coffee Creek Day Road sewer extension, so extending a sewer line down Day Road from Garden Acres to Boones Ferry Road to support development, industrial development in Basalt Creek and in Coffee Creek industrial areas again. As Matt mentioned, that we have a $250,000 grant from Business Oregon to support design of that project, and that design work will be kicking off here in the next couple months. We just finished the stormwater master plan update in 2024, and one of the priority projects out of that plan was the Day Road stormwater improvements. That's to increase capacity along an existing ditch between Day Road and Ritter Road, and that project is planned to start design next fiscal year. And that also supports development in the Coffee Creek, Basalt Creek areas. Willamette Water Supply Coordination, the good news I have there is their pipeline is completed. So their route from the treatment plant through Wilsonville all the way up to their new treatment plant in Sherwood is completed. We do have about 6 months of restoration work that they're doing in the city of Wilsonville. So you'll see construction at Ritter and 95th and Beckman and 95th and Wilsonville Road and Kinsman Road. That's the Willamette Water Supply doing their final restoration work. And then West Side Level B Reservoir is just finishing up and will be completed here in the next, this summer. All right, jumping over to the northeast quadrant. So again, we're north of kind of the town center area and east of I-5. A lot of projects in this area to support development in the Frog Pond area. I'll start up north at the Stafford 65th Ellickson Roundabout. That's a Clackamas County-led project that the city of Wilsonville and Washington County are supporting. That's two roundabouts that are planned at those two intersections. It's in design right now, about 60% level design, with construction starting in late 2027. Wilsonville contributes $1 million to that construction of that project. We have a few pedestrian projects that are scattered around the city. You can see one there on Parkway Center Drive that's near Burns Way, right next to Costco, to install a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, so those flashing crosswalk signs at that location. Jumping down, some of you have probably seen the progress that's been made on Frog Pond West Park. That'll be wrapping up here this summer, so extending into the next fiscal year by a few months, but that project is almost completed. We have an infill project on the Beckman Creek Trail. A lot of the trail has been constructed by developers through the Frog Pond area, but there's a 180-foot gap, and we're working on filling that gap and completing that trail connection. That project is in design right now. One of the bigger projects we have underway right now is the Stafford roadway improvements. So that consists of sidewalks, bike lanes, extension of water and sewer, two roundabout projects, two roundabout intersections along Stafford between Beckman Road and Cawley Road, so serving Frog Pond West and Frog Pond East. That project's at about 30% design right now, and we expect construction in about 1.5 years to start. One of the other bigger projects we have on this map is the Beckman Creek flow mitigation, so that's really the restoration of Beckman Creek under the new Beckman Road Bridge. That work is about to start here in about 2 weeks. Construction will start. As part of that work, we also have to do some improvements at Ash Meadows, in the Ash Meadows area, so that's why you see that project in 2 different locations. And then we have 60th Avenue Stormwater Pipeline, which is a storm pipe that's needed to help serve development in the Frog Pond East and South area.
Member Engel.
Yeah, did you say Canyon Creek at Ash Meadows or Beckman Creek?
Just a second.
Back 2 slides, I think.
So the Beckman Creek flow mitigation project, is that the?
There's 2 on there.
Yeah, there's 2. So there's one we refer to it as kind of the Ash Meadows neighborhood area. It's along Parkway Avenue. Yeah, so there's some stormwater improvements along that existing channel there.
I didn't realize that was Beckman Creek, still.
It's actually part of Coffee Lake Creek. It's a tributary of that, yeah. It's a totally different drainage basin. So jumping down to the southeast quadrant, we have, so south of Beckman Road, or south of the town center area and east of I-5, we have, I'll start here in the middle with the Beckman Creek Interceptor and Trail. That's one of our bigger projects that we have that loan from DEQ to construct upsize of the existing sewer line. There will be an access pathway for maintenance of that sewer line that will also double as a regional trail. So that will extend from Memorial Park all the way up to Beckman Road. And that project's at about 60% design right now, and we expect construction to start in 2027.
Member Cunningham.
Zach, do you know when the public is going to have their next opportunity to weigh in on that project?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of getting past the 60% design. So here, probably towards the end of summer, we're planning another open house with the community for that project.
Great. I know they're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of a add-on to that project, with that access path and trail, we can only take that so far down Beckman Creek before it starts getting the side slope getting pretty steep. So to extend that pathway to Wilsonville Road, we applied for an Oregon Community Paths grant and were awarded a $6 million grant to build a pedestrian bridge over Beckman Creek and then a boardwalk up to Wilsonville Road. That project, we're working with ODOT on an intergovernmental agreement right now, but we're expecting design to start in 2027 for that project. So the city has a 10% match in parks system development charges for that project.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Member Berry.
I think that's the first time I've heard about a pedestrian bridge. Where will that be located?
Yeah, it's going to be about, I think it's about 500 feet north of Wilsonville Road.
So it will parallel the road, kind of
Yeah.
going east-west?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because of the steepness of Beckman Creek slopes, we have to get the path to the west side of the creek and back up to Wilsonville Road, so.
So will it be where the overpass is for the roadway?
For where Wilsonville Road crosses Beckman Creek, yeah, right there, yeah.
Thank you.
For that I-5 pedestrian bridge, that $6 million grant you got, was that for, because you mentioned kind of the,
Sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
I meant it's a pedestrian bridge over Beckman Creek, not I-5. That's a different, I'll
Okay.
get to that in a minute.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Continuing on this map, we have some HVAC improvements at the community center. There's a police station seismic rehab. That project is, we're looking to get grants for that project. If we're not eligible or not able to get grants for that project, it won't move forward, but there is city match funds budgeted for that project. I know there was a question at the last Budget Committee hearing about the Memorial Park ball fields safety improvements. That project the construction contract's been awarded. The contractor is about to start ordering the materials, so it includes new backstops, new dugouts, safety netting, a new shelter in the center of the ball field, or in the plaza of the ball fields. So those are long lead items, so you probably won't see construction starting until late August or September, but that project is moving forward. And then a lot of work planned next year for Charbonneau. We have our Charbonneau Consolidated Improvements that tackles the road, water, sewer, stormwater needs all in discrete areas, so limiting the impacts on the neighbors as much as we can. So that project will continue next year. And then there's some other stormwater improvements along the golf course with that Charbonneau 2A project, and then the Miley Road stormwater improvements. If you've been out to French Prairie Road in the last week, you probably saw a lot of cones out there. We had set up a sample project where people could experience what it would be like to walk or bike by taking a lane in each direction along about a mile-long section of French Prairie Road. And we're just starting to get feedback from the community on how they like that or dislike that. And we'll have more information about that. But we'll be finishing up that study here this summer, and we'll have, hopefully have a preferred alternative to move forward and try to get funding for construction.
Member Shevlin.
I won't comment on that particular project, but yes, there's lots of opinions in Charbonneau about closing down part of French Prairie. My question has to do with the Charbonneau Consolidated Improvement Plan, and as I note that consolidated means that we're doing, when you choose an area to start in, then you're doing the sewer and the stormwater and the road, all of that at one time. How do you decide which one to start on? I noticed on page 192, then you list French Prairie Phase 2 and 3, I'm sorry, French Prairie Phase 3, et cetera. There must be a scientific way that you're deciding which one to start on.
Yeah, so back in 2014, 2015, we worked on a plan for Charbonneau called the Charbonneau Consolidated Improvement Plan. And in that plan, it prioritized these areas based on how poor of condition those utilities were in. So we're basically following that plan. We're on the 5th phase of that project with the upcoming work. Right now, that planned work for construction includes Edgewater and Village Green Circle and a portion of French Prairie Road.
So most of those utilities are underground where the biggest need is.
Yeah.
What the citizens see are the potholes in the street, and so they think that's the biggest problem. And then they want their street fixed before they understand that the utilities under the street are in more higher need than getting their street fixed. And they all know about the depth of the pothole in order to have it be cold patched. But I am frequently asked, when is my street going to be fixed? So
Yeah.
I try to direct them to that. So that's good information to have, that there's more repair under the street than what is reflected in the actual
Yeah.
condition of the street. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a big challenge because if you do the road first, then you're coming back and tearing it all up, so.
And they are beginning to understand that,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
all right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so that's the southeast quadrant. So jumping over to the last area of town, south of Barber Street, west of I-5, we have the Willamette Water Supply Coordination again at that Kinsman-Wilsonville Road intersection. They're going to be paving that Wilsonville Road Kinsman intersection here in the next couple of months, and then they will hopefully be done in that front of Fred Meyer gas station, because I know it's been under construction for a long time. I did want to mention that all of the city's costs and any of the city's consultant costs to help manage that project are reimbursed by Willamette Water Supply. We still have to include that in the budget as an expense. And then really exciting, the Brown Road improvements are about to start construction next week. The kickoff meeting, Meet the Contractor event is tomorrow at Tranquil Park. So we are very excited about that project getting to construction. And then down there at the Willamette River, we have some improvements at the water treatment plant, doing some improvements to the pump station, the finished water pump station. And then as part of the wastewater treatment plant, we need to expand the aeration basin. That work is about to kick off here in the next couple months. And then we need to replace the backup UV disinfection unit also at the treatment plant. And that work is at about 90% design and will be starting construction next year.
Member Skull.
Question about Brown Road, starts next week, contractor meeting or events tomorrow. Are they going to shut the road down? Is it a detour, or will residents be able to pass through?
No, the road will remain open during construction. There might be some times where it's limited to one direction, and there will be some detours in place, but for the most part, it will remain open during construction.
Thanks.
Member Scritzmeyer.
I just have a question about the UV sanitation situation at the water treatment facility. What's the life of that? It's quite costly. How long is it going to last us?
So those, I think I don't know if Laura's still here, but I think the one that's there is over 20 years old, is that? Yeah, so that's a long time for those units. There's actually two, so once this one's replaced, it will last us for the next 20 years. And it will meet the future needs of the treatment plant as Wilsonville continues to grow. Yes, it is. Any equipment at the treatment plant is costly.
Member Engel.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, so I comment at the appropriate time. Are we going to go through these individual major projects separately, or are they being bundled here and we'll talk to them at kind of a collective state?
You feel free to, if you have specific questions on any specific. I think Zach was just bundling them up into the quadrant, kind of to highlight the quadrants, but they're all fair game for questions at this point.
Sure, I just wasn't curious if we were going to go into them in detail subsequently, or if that was the detail.
No, that's the detail.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to some of the infrastructure projects that we have a number of master plans and studies that are also included in the capital budget. There's a list of them here. A couple of them that I want to point out are the transportation system master plan update. So that was last updated. A major update was last done in 2013. And we are mandated to update that master plan by 2029. So I know the planning department and the engineering department are going to be working to try and get some grants to help support that work over the next year. But that work really needs to get started in updating that plan. Water distribution master plan is currently underway, and we're hoping to have that completed by the end of next fiscal year. And then we also need to start the wastewater collection system master plan that was last completed in 2015. We need to do quite a bit of data collection before that actual work gets started off, so there's some budget in there to start that next fiscal year. And then the last thing I'd mention is the urban forest climate resilience. So there's a budget line item in there to deal with the impacts of emerald ash borer and the Mediterranean oak borer. So there's really limited budget in there to just deal with trees that are dying from those impacts. That's what I have for the capital improvement program. Happy to answer any questions.
I had a question on the I-5 pedestrian bridge project. So the bulk of the costs for this one, it keeps getting put in like the current year budget, and then the next year it's moved to the next current year budget. Do you know if the timeline as it is accurate? Will the majority of the expenditures be spent in the upcoming fiscal year, or is it going to get pushed again for another year? And is there a reason for that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I meant to mention that project, but it's way up there in the corner and I missed it. So, so with the I-5 pedestrian bridge, we have been pretty aggressive at going after grants for this for the last few years. So really that line item is for our grant match. And a lot of these grants are very competitive, so it's really important for the city to show that we have the match budgeted and available. That gives us a leg up when these grant become available and are assessed. So, so that's why you keep seeing it. We keep trying to add to it each year to increase that amount to get up to what the transportation SDC portion of that project is about $13 million. So we add to it a little bit every year.
Okay, thank you. Member Berry?
Oh, thank you. So you were just mentioning the Mediterranean oak borer, and you said there was minimal funds in there. So what is the money that's in this budget available for?
It's for removing trees that are dead from those impacts that are city responsibility.
So before, way back when on the council, we talked about dealing with the trees that were impacted, and we were looking at different ways to do that, like incinerate them on site or transport them somewhere else. So what's the plan?
Yeah, so Megan can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I believe the method or the recommendation on how to deal with those infected trees have changed, that it's really just a standard removal anymore. There's no special dealing with those infected trees.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Member Engel?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about the I-5 pedestrian bridge first and ask what the operating costs, page 173, those are set at 2,600, 2,700, going up to 3,000 a year. And to me, for a $15 million bridge, that seems like a really low operating cost. And I wanted a little bit more clarity about what those operating costs reflect. I'm assuming those are the projected costs once the bridge is built. Just wanted to confirm that too.
Yeah, it would be once the bridge, if built, would be the operating costs. And they're, I believe they're just rough estimates. We don't have specific data yet on the total operating costs. If Zach, you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the operating costs wouldn't be any different than, a road or a trail. It just happens to be a bridge.
Yeah, I just wondered what that reflect. Does that reflect regular street sweeping? Does that reflect graffiti removal? Does that, encompass all of the costs that are going to actually occur in the event of this bridge being built?
We'll have to get back on that. We'll have to get back on the actual basis of the estimation, but it would encompass a portion, if not all of that, to an estimated level.
And then separate capital improvement projects. This is the one that I asked last time. With the Beckman Interceptor Trail, I think that was projected to have some impacts maintenance-wise. And I was curious if you could break down for me how much of those would be coming out of the general fund through parks maintenance versus what would be going to essentially, if the sewer fund would, sewer operating would make contributions to that maintenance because it's primarily a sewer service access that forms hopefully a beautiful pedestrian trail.
Right.
Yeah, the way the project's being funded is through, it is the sewer maintenance access, so the bulk of the project is funded through the loan with DEQ. Amenities for the trail that are parks related would be funded by parks.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one more clarifying component on the I-5 pedestrian bridge. You'll notice on page 209 that it reflects the construction costs through fiscal year 2030-31. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of operating costs in the 5-year forecast.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. other questions surrounding the capital improvement project budget?
Member Berry.
I just have a follow-up question. So you said we're trying to get grant money for the pedestrian bridges. And so when there's money in the budget for the construction of the bridge, then we're anticipating at some point grant money will come back and reimburse? Is that how that works?
Or we're applying for a grant and need to
Right.
show the match. It's kind of a strategic positioning that it's in the budget, here's the grant application, and we move forward from that. But of course, if the funds don't materialize, you know, in terms of like the police rehabilitation, seismic upgrade, if we don't get the grant, we're not going to do the project, basically, or it'll be just delayed until, you know, future years.
Yeah, that's the same with the I-5 pedestrian bridge. If we don't get a grant, then that money won't be spent.
Member Cunningham.
And just clarifying, because shows in here $13.4 million, but clarifying that's half the cost, right? We're looking for the grant to match that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the total cost would be closer to 27 million.
Yeah, I believe the last cost estimate we did was $28 million for both the bridge and there's also a park in the town center, what we refer to as a gateway plaza. So it would include the cost for both of those.
Member Skull.
I think you've already said it, but on the match side, on our side of that grant, we're indexing yearly to accommodate for cost increases, inflation and all that, just to stay on pace with what the total cost would be.
Yeah, for that project in particular, we have been every 3 or 4 years, we've been getting actual cost estimate updates as part of our grant applications. But yes, typically on the other projects, we do apply a CPI adjustment.
Any other questions?
Oh. Well, so that wraps up the CIP portion, and that really concludes the overall budget presentation for us, and turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, are there any, yes, Member Engel?
I had one go back to yesterday question on page 156. Yesterday, meaning last Wednesday. And it mentions a removal under the budget highlights, 157. Commuter rail expenses have been removed from the department budget following the expiration of an intergovernmental agreement. That's about $400,000 that has been reduced from the budget. And I just wanted to know, were we contributing to WES and that's no longer the case? Is that going to come back in the future? I was curious about that one line item.
Okay, yeah, too bad we don't, Dwight's not here, is he? Dwight
Yep.
Brusher, City Transit. I can take a first stab and maybe have Amanda. Basically, the existing contract that we have to contribute to the commuter rail service expired. So we don't have a contract now, so we didn't budget anything going forward. But in short, yes, we do make a contribution of something in the range of $340,000 a year, and that contract is expired. Amanda wants to add on to any of that? Okay.
Will we keep getting rail service even if we are not under an agreement?
I can probably take that one. So TriMet has an agreement with the rail companies to provide that commuter rail. That contract goes longer than the contract we had for contributing to it. So TriMet is required to provide that commuter service for use of the rail.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any other questions? Member Cunningham?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we covered some questions that I had last meeting on page 159 regarding the smart transportation numbers and their fixed route. We did receive clarification today that The estimated cost per passenger trip is $37.87, reflecting a 21% increase from last year. And that the total operating cost should have been $9.75 million, not $6.3 million, representing a that can't be right, a 59% increase in total operating cost. Is that right, Keith?
Well, this is the information we got from SMART this morning, so if we have additional, we need another bite of that, we can shoot it back to SMART and then come back when we do the budget again with council on that first council meeting in June, we can come back with additional information.
But is that 9.75 million, that is the, what?
That's their operating budget. I think that's their materials and services plus personal services. It doesn't include their capital outlay purchases. So,
And part of that is reflected also in the increase of services, right, with the Clackamas Town Center?
Clackamas Town Center and the Amazon Woodburn
Correct.
routes?
Yes,
And expanded Saturday service for the Whala?
correct.
So there are some expanded services, but those are the updated numbers. I think it all stemmed just from that total operating cost number being incorrect on that page.
Yes, we
Any-
can absolutely work with them to update those numbers in the adopted budget.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing no other questions, are there any members of the public who previously did not testify who now wish to testify regarding the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget? Not seeing any. Does staff have any further presentation or comments at this time regarding the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget?
no.
No, okay. Sorry, I think I skipped a part. Maybe not. Do we have additional time to discuss it still, or do we move into the motion?
Now, this is a perfect opportunity for discussion.
Okay. Does anyone have any other comments or anything? Any other discussion points? Member Cunningham?
Yeah, I was just going to say that my thanks to Keith and Catherine and the finance team for the budget. It's a lot of work to get this done, so thank you. It's always presented, in a very organized fashion that makes even a dum-dum like me have an easier time with it. So thank you very much, both of you and your team. And then I would just go all the way back to kind of where we started on this conversation a week ago. I sat down with the city manager on Friday. We had a good conversation. I expressed how pleased I was that we're taking the initiative to look at that general fund and look at those cost efficiencies, savings, options that we have to try to shore up that general fund going forward. And so City Manager Troja, I very much appreciate that, and I think our citizens do as well, that we're taking that proactive step to look at this as we look at that budget warning for the second year in a row. So, with that, I'm pleased with this budget, and I look forward to approving it, and I look forward to what comes out of that look and going into later this year and into the budget cycle next year. So thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, Member Perry?
Yeah, I would just like to add on, thank you to the finance department and the city's staff leadership and to all the departments. I know it's a lot of work to put together a budget. I look at this budget as a value statement for the city and a roadmap of where we want to spend money. And I can see why we always win awards year after year after year, because so much thought has been put into the statement and the budget. So thank you.
Member Skull?
I'll third that. Thank you all, Keith, Catherine, staff, great presentations. And I'd, again, like to echo the fact that I appreciate that we're going to spend some time here at the second half of the year to look through opportunities. And my only comment to that is that we need to look on both sides. You know, we need to make sure that we're doing things efficiently. We make sure that we're capturing and reducing costs. But to Matt's point, I think it's most important that we take a good, hard look at what our future development looks like and continue to build that tax base to move the city forward, however that looks. I think that's most important. In my experience, it's always been about I've always tried to balance both the cost side and the income side, and I think we as a city need to do the same thing and take a balanced approach to that and not, not focus on any one side. So good job. It's a great budget, easy to connect the dots. And I think all of our questions were answered fairly, actually excellently, and look forward to approving the budget also. Thank you.
Member Shevlin.
Thank you. I ditto all that, and I want to thank my fellow Budget Committee members. It's apparent, particularly our new members, that you did your homework. You had some very good questions, ones that I hadn't even thought of. So I think we're all better off for the collective work of everyone on the committee. And we learned from one another and had some very good questions. And then thank you to the team for answering them.
Mayor.
I just want to ditto everything that's been said by my counselors on tonight. I really am grateful for, this is my 5th time in the budget process. And I thought that this one really went well. I really appreciate the leadership of Ms. Troja on taking the initiative at the beginning to let us know that she's doing a deep dive on the general fund. I really appreciate staff that stay late hours, some that you don't see in the evenings that have come and have really done great service to be here. And I do appreciate the fact that when we're looking at the budget that we have to make sure the dollars go far, but we want to make sure that when we look at it, we're representing the community's values of what the community wants by way of their budget. It's not just about cutting things or not streamlining things. We want to make sure that we're putting priorities with what the community desires. And we have a large community with a lot of different interest groups. But I want to thank you as a city for all you've done as staff. And also, I concur with Councilor Shevlin. The citizen volunteers on this budget committee were stellar on this presentation, asking very thoughtful questions, and we're on top of their game. So thank you.
Member Beach.
Thank you for letting me participate in this process. I think what I've learned over the last 3 years is that we have really smart people who care about what they do. And it's nice to see that. My quick Google search tells me that a lot of the cities around us are not as financially stable as we are. I think Beaverton was $10 million in the hole last year, and I think Sherwood's cutting positions, and we've set ourselves up to at least make it through some of these negative times that we have coming up. But what I appreciate about this budget versus the last two is didn't really see a lot of additions. No FTEs. It didn't seem like there was any new FTEs that I saw. And so I think it was a smart kind of let's see how it goes over the next year budget to see where we get next year. And I think I really appreciate that given what we've seen over the last couple of years. So I appreciate where we're at.
I would just like to echo pretty much what everyone has said. Thank you to staff for all of your time and attention to this. I think, Gina, you made it clear that this is a status quo budget, but you're going to be doing a lot of work over the upcoming year. So I'm excited to see what I'm assuming is going to be a significantly different budget next year. And it's going to take a lot of work on your team and everyone else that you're talking to. It's going to be a lot of effort, and I'm sure uncomfortable discussions and conversations around where things are at and the work that they have and how we can improve things. So good luck with all of that in the upcoming year. And thank you for everything you guys have done this year. Any other comments? Yeah, Member Engel.
just want to echo that as this is my first time through this process, and I appreciate the effort that clearly goes into this budget to make it digestible, to break it down into chunks that can easily be crawled through. Also appreciate the attention to the questions that were asked, very much the responsive answers coming in a quickly fashion, and clear interest in making responsible decisions to go after grant dollars where those are available and to withhold expenditures when they're not. I appreciate that quite a bit. And I'm pleased to have been a contributor in this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. Member Scritzmeyer.
Okay, I won't be the only person to not say something. Thank you very much. It's been great to have our questions answered so thoughtfully. The budget you prepared was balanced and very detailed, and it just shows how dedicated everyone is to Wilsonville and its citizens. So thank you very much. I'm grateful to have been a part of this process.
Okay. Might have done this slightly out of order, but seeing as there were no other people who wish to testify, or no further requests to testify, the public hearing on the City of Wilsonville's fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget is now closed at 8:33 p.m. Does anyone have a motion on the City of Wilsonville fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget? Member Skull.
Let's see. I move for the approval of the fiscal year 2026-2027 proposed budget in the total amount of $300,457,981 and levying the full amount of the city general tax rate of $2.52. Just the general rate of $2.5206.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Member Berry. The motion to approve the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget has been made by Member Skull and seconded by Member Berry. Any additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Having no further business on the agenda, I adjourn the City of Wilsonville Budget Committee meeting at 8:35 p.m. Okay, and then urban renewal. I call to order the May 12, 2026 meeting of the Budget Committee of the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency. Will the agency recorder please do the roll call?
Chair Russell.
Here.
Member Beach.
Here.
Member Scritzmeyer.
Here.
Member Engel.
Here.
Member O'Neill.
Here.
Member Berry.
Here.
Member Cunningham.
Here.
Member Skull.
Here.
Member Shevlin.
Here.
And Member Byers is excused.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the order of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Mayor O'Neill and seconded by Member Skull to approve the order of the agenda. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 13th, 2025 Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It has been moved by Mayor O'Neill and seconded by Member Shevlin to approve the May 13th, 2025 Urban Renewal Budget Committee meeting minutes. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Public hearing, I call to order the Budget Committee public hearing on the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency's fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget at 8:37 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, the Budget Committee will be taking public testimony tonight at the public hearing. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. As a courtesy, members of the public have the option to provide public testimony on the proposed budget before the staff presentations begin, in order to accommodate those citizens who do not want to wait until the presentations have been made to speak. Community members may elect to wait to testify until after the staff presentations have been completed. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes. A timed buzzer will go off when the 3 minutes are up. Staff will then present their report. Additional public testimony will be allowed regarding the proposed fiscal year budget for community members who elected to wait to testify. And after all community members who wish to speak have testified, staff will have time to provide any additional comments to the committee. Information regarding how the public could attend this meeting, give testimony is posted at City Hall and was also timely published in the Wilsonville Spokesman and is also posted on the city's website shown on the screen. Notice was given that testimony could be submitted for the record in advance in writing by emailing or mailing it to the city recorder. If you are listening to this meeting remotely, when the time for public testimony is called, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom or press star 9 on your telephone if you'd like to testify. If you're having difficulties with these instructions, you may call the number shown on the screen and enter the webinar ID number shown on the screen when prompted. When called up to testify, state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the Budget Committee. Simply indicating you agree with the prior testimony given by a speaker you identify as sufficient. Is there anyone wishing to testify? Okay, seeing none, seeing no further requests to testify, the city manager will kick off the budget presentation with the budget message, followed by staff presentations.
Good evening, Urban Renewal Budget Committee members. I can see if I can get that right. Tonight before you is the Urban Renewal Budget. This budget, I'll turn it over to the Finance Department. I don't really have a whole lot in terms of a city manager presentation for this evening. I think what we're going to do is have the finance staff go over the budget, and then we'll have an opportunity for any other additional dialogue as it relates to the budget.
Thanks, Gina. My name is Keith. I'm the city's finance director. What we have tonight is our urban renewal budget. It's basically just a short, sharp budget. There's 3 items. One of them we've already discussed. There's 3 items on the budget. One is in the West Side plan. It is for the construction of Brown Road. The second one is another CIP project in the Coffee Creek Plan area, and that's CIP 2115. That's the Day Road Sewer Extension projects, $630,000. And then the third budgeted item is the continuation of the Wilsonville Investment Now program. So, graphically displayed in a chart here. The tax increment, again, just like the city budget, total resources are going to equal total requirements, and there are the, in columnar form is the plan, the 2 plans and the existing program, which is the Wind Twist program. The tax increment expected is $2 million, and that is the foregone revenue loss to the overlapping taxing districts. And that is used to pay for the development of the urban renewal area, basically pay for those CIP projects, which on the expense side of the requirements is reflected in that capital projects line item of 3.7. That's that 3.61 we talked about for the Brown Road and the Day Road Sewer Extension. So it's a pretty simple budget. There's not much new. It's just a rollover of projects from the prior year as well as the existing Wind Twist program. And that is it, save for specific questions.
Any questions? Anything? Okay. Seeing no questions, are there any members of the public who previously did not testify who now wish to testify regarding the urban renewal fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget? Okay. Does staff have any further presentation or comments at this time regarding the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget? No. Okay. Seeing no further requests to testify, the public hearing on the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency's fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget is now closed at 8:42 PM. Does anyone have a motion on the Urban Renewal Agency's fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget?
I'm going to do my best impression of our city attorney. I move for approval of the 2026-27 proposed budget for the Urban Renewal Agency in the amount of $7,313,853, screwed that up a little bit, and levy the full amount of the division, the tax amount for the Coffee Creek District and the Wind Twist Bioscience plans.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion to approve the Urban Renewal Agency's fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget has been made by Member Cunningham and seconded by Member Skull. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Having no further business on the agenda, I adjourn this Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting at 8:43 PM.